Out again of part of Mr. Biden's Biden administration. Joining us now, William Lee, the Milken Institute, chief economist, but far more a broad reach with his service to the International Monetary Fund of the global political economy. We're thrilled that Bill Lee could brief us this morning. Bill, let me just cut to the obvious question. Is this Obama due?
Well, the Obama number 2 is going to face a very different world than Obama 1. The multilateral framework has changed significantly. We have a growing sense of regionalism. Globalization has really reshaped itself into regional blocks. And within, say, the Pacific bloc, where we just saw a new trade treaty put together, China is really starting to do 2 things. That dual circulation strategy of theirs is to inward and build up their domestic demand and domestic markets, and at the same time reassure everyone that they still want Belt and Road. They still want everyone to be trading with China. So these consolidations are taking place. Boris Johnson, unfortunately, is coming out with Brexit at exactly the wrong time. He would have had a much better reception with President Trump, who wants to have bilateral relations, as opposed to President Biden, who has really committed himself to being a Euro fan, someone who wants to promote the Euro Union and our relationships with the Euro Union.
Bill Lee, when we look at the meter of all this, and we can begin with David Weston's conversation today with Peter Navarro of the White House. Look for that in the 12 o'clock hour, folks. How far away really will the outcome of policy be of a Biden administration from the stridency of Dr. Navarro?
I think the tone will be completely different. I think there's going to be a lot more soft talk and brie and chablis meetings, as opposed to the very beer and chips kind of approach of the Trump administration, where it's show me what you've got, and if you don't have anything, let's not even bother to talk. One of the frustrations I think that people have had during the Obama years is that the brie and chablis meetings really have resulted in a lot of talk but very little action. And I think one challenge for the Biden administration is to see if they can break through that, given the changes that have been put in place in the last 4 years, to capitalize on, we've got tariffs. So if you want to have better relations with us, let's talk about removing tariffs in a strategic way that benefits both of us. So I think the Trump administration has given the Biden administration a lot of tools that they can use that they didn't have before in accelerating these multilateral talks.
But Bill, we focus and markets focus so much on actually, multilateral talks, on globalization and a return to normal. What does it mean for the near 50% of Americans that felt left out? What can Joe Biden and his administration do to mend the divided United States of America?
That's a great question. And that's exactly the point, the challenge for the Biden administration. He's going to have to face 73 million voters who said, I really didn't like your approach. Now convince me you can do better. And he's going to have a very skeptical audience. So he's going to have to show that multilateral relations mean better jobs and better income and bigger consumption baskets for everyone, including those who may be displaced by trade. So the first thing we learned about international trade is it benefits everybody if you have subsidies and real allocations of labor and capital within the economy to go to different sectors. Reallocation is a nice term to use in a textbook, but that means job losses and job gains, and to make sure that the people who lose jobs have enough income to tie them over to get them into the new jobs. And that's going to be the domestic challenge for Chair Yellen as Treasury Secretary, to reshape the financial system, to direct funds to where it's needed, and the Labor Secretary to retrain people in a way that gets them jobs that would tie them over into the new economy.
Bill, what does that mean for debt creation, and what does that mean for companies overall in America?
It's going to take some spending, and fortunately for the world, all the debt increases that have gone and put in place because of COVID can be accommodated, and if it's thought to be temporary, it can be accommodated very easily. But if the new economy is faced with a lot of entitlements, and the new programs that are put in place by the Biden administration are going to expand the entitlements that permanently increase our deficit, then the fiscal hawks will start to come out, and we'll start to see, probably in about 5 or 10 years, but not immediately, a lot of consequences for displaced capital and distortions in capital flows. But that's not a problem now. Right now, the problem is get the economy going, and it's time to get in big and spend big in order to restructure the economy in a way that we can work well in the post-COVID economy.
William Lee with the Milken Institute with us. Thrilled that he will continue with us here. We must speak to him on the Pacific Rim, and particularly on foreign exchange, is the dynamic of the Pacific Rim. Just another day in Hong Kong, but is decidedly not. What you see there is a calm and collected chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, speaking at length, quietly, with a lovely velvet curtain behind her. That was not the case a year ago, where literally sentences into her address, demonstrators protesting disrupted this annual event. William Lee with us with Milken Institute, and of course, truly an expert with the IMF for years on the Pacific Rim. Bill Lee, what does Hong Kong look like Thanksgiving of 2021?
Quiet little speech you just talked about really speaks volumes. It says the international city that we used to know as Hong Kong is now just a regional suburb for the Pearl River Delta Basin, and its integration into China really tells us that the plan for China is no longer one country, two system, but one country and lots of suburbs, of which Hong Kong will be one, along with Shenzhen, the tech center. So this really is a huge change for how we should be looking at Hong Kong.
I have tattooed to my brain, Bill Lee, the experience of completely underestimating sanctions in South Africa a zillion years ago. What would you expect to see as a response of Western banks? Are they going to be co-opted by Beijing? Do they take a strategy, or do they really step away as they would step away from Shanghai or Chengdu?
The global banks will never step away because that Chinese market is so valuable to them. So whatever it takes, they will do and go along with whatever the Chinese want to preserve that market share within China. And I think one of the sad things is to say that the innovations that made Shenzhen and Hong Kong was the notion of experimentation. But we heard from a speech by Xi Jinping just about a month ago to say that all these innovations now have to be with an eye toward the needs of the central system. Instead of the old Deng Xiaoping, cross the river by touching stones, experiment, you fall in, you get wet. Well, now it's sort of like, make sure when you experiment, you keep the needs of the center, the mother country in mind. That kind of central planning and direction of innovation is something that I think will sort of destroy the goose that laid the golden eggs, both for Hong Kong as a financial center, financial innovations, as well as technological innovations that we saw out of Shenzhen.
Bill, I don't really know what to do with all of this news about possible defaults in China. I don't know if it's something that could be systemic or could really destabilize financial stability. Is it something that you worry about?
Yes, it is. And in fact, one of the huge vulnerabilities about China's development over the several decades has been the notion of bad lending, whether it's bad loans in banks and now bad corporate loans by way of the financial markets. And one of the things that the positive spin that China puts on this is that, well, we don't really have bankruptcy laws. So we need a couple of bankruptcies to just get us going and see what it is that to have bankruptcies and what kind of legal procedures we need to resolve these things. That's well and good, but there's such a huge mountain of debt there, and so much of it are with state-owned enterprises, state meaning provincial government as well as central government. And what was thought to be backed by the government with no credit risk now has a lot of credit risk. So the notion of evaluating good credit within China has to be rethought, and it's going to be a huge challenge for the private sector, especially the Western banks and Western lenders that go into China.
But we also saw, going back to Hong Kong, how does the Biden administration actually deal with that, and how do Hong Kongers react? Is there going to be a brain drain out of Hong Kong? If anything has showed, despite all of the concerns about rioting and the like, and a crackdown in recent months, it's still the prime spot in Asia to raise money for IPOs and the like.
It has been, and I think that's the one crown jewel that that Beijing is quite aware of, and until Shanghai becomes the new center for IPOs, which they tried with ANT and somehow flubbed because of the challenges to regulating the fintech industry. Until that happens, Hong Kong will still be the place where you get foreign money to come into China. And the Biden administration really hasn't said much about it, but what we know about the desire for President Biden to promote multilateral trade deals is that they will try to deal with China in a way that blends them into the global financial system and blends them into the IMF, World Bank nexus. And those talks have stalled in the sense that China has gone on its own to say, we're creating our own regional trade pacts. They just signed the regional trade pact with Southeast Asia. And it's so difficult for a lot of countries within there to get out of the tyranny of China, that India just said, forget it, I'm not taking part of this. So we have TPP and that new China-based regional trade agreement. These are the kind of regional blocks that the new Biden administration is going to have to confront in their multilateral framework. And that's a challenge that your guess is as good as mine, because the Obama administration didn't go anywhere making those things work.
Billy, thank you so much. A Milken Institute chief economist there, joining us on a number of subjects.